Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode 103 of High Spirits. I'm Ben Larson, and with me, as always, is Anna Ray Grabstein. We're recording Tuesday, August 26th, 2025. We got another great show for you today. We have Lulu Tsui coming on the show. Gonna throw it down for the New Yorkers in the crew. Yeah, West Coast versus East Coast. We'll see what's going on with that. But before we get there,
all love.
Anna Ray, how are you doing? How's your week going?
My week is great. It feels like it just got started. It's my brother's birthday today. I don't think he ever listens, but I'm just going to give him a shout out. Happy birthday. I'm going to go surprise him later this afternoon. I got him this really incredible velour jumpsuit that I'm pretty excited to give him as a gift.
Is he a velour jumpsuit type of guy, or is this just like a
No, not at all. He's an engineer, and I feel like he needs some velour jumpsuit in his life. So I needed to make sure that he has one. Yeah. How about you? What's going on in your world?
Man, it's just a crazy industry, I guess. Kids went back to school, so that was great. My life can somewhat feel back to normal. But yeah, you said it feels like the beginning of the week. For me, it just feels like we're in a long week already. Yesterday was just long. There's a lot of news that's dropping politically. State of California is just not a fun place to be if you're in cannabis or hemp. And the state legislature continues to run amok. And so, yeah, it's like the highest highs and the lowest lows all at the same time. Like just like two planes living on them simultaneously.
The highest highs and the lowest lows is such a resonant theme. I feel it as well. It's pretty wild in this industry. I think how much we've normalized the roller coaster, all of us. If you're still in it, like you just have to be able to ride it out and get through those big humps. All the
there's been occasionally times where we brought on some new employees from outside the industry, and it's literally like 2 or 3 months. Like, I'm sorry, I think I've made a terrible mistake. Not that things are unstable here by any means, but yeah, it's been wild.
Yeah. Well, let's jump into a little bit of news. There is a really interesting draft bill to regulate hemp products that's being socialized around the industry and around the internet. It has not been formally introduced, but it is out there, and it's Representative Morgan Griffith from Virginia. He's a Republican congressman, and it regulates hemp specifically, not cannabis more broadly. And it does things like formally permit hemp-derived products, including beverages and other oral and inhalable products. It would ban additives like alcohol, caffeine, nicotine, and melatonin. It would mandate HHS to set milligram limits for products within 3 years, or default limits would kick in. What do you think about this? You following this news?
Well, I mean, I'm glad to hear this rumor because it's not official, you said, right? So I heard about a Griffith bill, I think a year plus ago, when all this started going down with the farm bill and appropriations the first time around. So it's good to hear that it might be coming back. But I'm going to fast forward to the end. I just don't like the idea of things defaulting to the inaction of the FDA or HHS. I just think that they have proven for decades that they are ineffective and don't act. Like, CBD is still not allowed in food, folks. Like, that's a thing. And I just don't know how to reconcile that. Like, the hope that HHS or FDA, even under, RFK Jr., I just don't imagine it getting any better.
Yeah.
So I'm not excited about it because I think some of those limits, especially the THC limits, are quite low.
Yeah, it has very low THC limits for sure. I mean, I think too that this really seems like it's broadly a cannabinoid legalization bill, but by focusing on hemp, lawmakers are ignoring the existing tension that already exists with state licensed cannabis businesses. And I think that if they're going to do some sort of broad legalization through Congress, that they should be looking at more of a one plant initiative, which is what we've talked about here before, at cannabinoids broadly, and not out and locking out the existing state licensed cannabis businesses, and just really muddying the waters even more by further creating a legal pathway for hemp and not doing anything for cannabis. It's just so messy. So I would to declutter and see a federal plant if possible.
Yeah,
or
it's
progress.
the perpetual cluttering of and layering of legislation is just getting absurd, right? And like we're witnessing this at the federal level, we're witnessing this at the state level. You know, states like California with the AB Assembly Bill 8 effort, trying to rewrite the definition of hemp. So instead of the origin defining hemp, it's basically if it has 0.3% THC or below and originated from hemp, then it's considered hemp. Anything above at any point in the supply chain is cannabis. And it's just like, so all of a sudden it's like, okay, I see what they're trying to do. This is a way for them to funnel it into the purview of the DCC. I was in Sacramento recently. I saw some new amendments circulating 8 months into the process, mind you, new amendments that completely changed the intention of the bill. The bill was originally intended to allow for some hemp-derived minor cannabinoids to enter the cannabis supply chain so that we can continue to enjoy products that have a mix of THC, CBN, THCV, more nuanced products.
Regulated supply chain doesn't produce those cannabinoids anymore because they're not.
No, but there's certain contingents of growers and operators that like to claim that it's going to kill their business if you allow for these minor cannabinoids to enter the fray. Like, I'm sorry, try to go out and acquire metric CBD and compare that to the price of CBD in the open marketplace. Like, it's absurd. So these recent amendments would essentially ban hemp extracts and hemp finished form products from entering the state. So it's a hemp bill to promote hemp growing in California, but if those hemp plants or their extracts at any point exceed 0.3% THC will be considered cannabis. And so it's a bullshit bill now. It was originally sponsored by CCIA and I think folks like Akiva. And so it's like it's completely just lost the thread. And that is Sacramento politics at this point in time.
Well, Gavin Newsom is very busy trolling Donald Trump. So he's
gerrymandering. It's a gerrymandering. I was up there. All anyone talked about was gerrymandering. I'm just like, oh my god, what a circus!
All right, well, let's leave California on the table for now. We are going to talk about one more story, and then we'll bring on Lulu. So we've got prohibitionists in the federal government and all around DC. And recently there was a broad coalition of anti-drug and religious groups that were led by Kevin Sabet, who sent a letter to Trump urging him to oppose marijuana rescheduling. But interestingly, and what I wanted to bring to the table is that one of the notable signatories is the DEA Employees Association, the Federal Narcotic Agents, which represents the DEA personnel, the very agency currently reviewing the rescheduling process. And they are saying that Trump should oppose it. And the letter doesn't admit that keeping cannabis criminalized protects their jobs. Instead, it leans on old arguments saying that marijuana has no medical value, that rescheduling would give dispensaries who are actually street dealers $2 billion of tax breaks, and that international cartels would somehow benefit from these federal deductions. But to me, I see that the real conflict is that fewer cannabis arrests means less job security for these agents. So rather than embracing rescheduling as a way to free up resources to fight genuinely harmful crime, they're using fear tactics to preserve prohibition and protect their budgets.
This is the exact same strategy that they implemented to criminalize weed back in the 1920s and 1930s, right? Like this was the playbook. It's like, oh, we lost alcohol prohibition, so how do we spend our time and money? Let's criminalize weed. So like it's the same playbook, and it's so transparent. But it's happening everywhere. And not to bring it back to California, but every conversation I'm in Sacramento, I hear about DCC's opinion, and I'm like, DCC is a regulator. They're there to regulate the laws that are handed to them. Like, the fact that they have opinions makes me just so infuriated with politics in general, and this is just another case. When you said letter in DC, I thought you were going to talk about Attach and their letter that caused the whole kerfuffle with our friends at CANRA and the FDA with their personal information being socialized, but I'll leave that aside.
I mean, it's one of these things where we are constantly reminded that kind of economic influences have a huge kind of outsized relationship to the way that policy moves. And it came up a lot in early drug reform movement when you had the Corrections Officers Association fighting against drug policy reform. And it was really because there was a lot of small communities that had these huge, massive prisons built in them, and they depend on those jobs to keep their towns alive. And so in order to keep the prison open, you need to keep criminalizing people. And we just create these terrible feedback loops in our society sometimes that reinforce the wrong things. And unwinding them is often a lot more complicated than just doing the sensible policy change that seems so obvious, right?
Yeah. Well, one state that is not free of challenging politics and policy is New York. And so I'm excited to jump into our show today.
Yes. Today's guest is Lulu Tsui, co-founder and chief experience officer on the Revel, the company behind Revelry, which is an event that's coming up that we're going to hear about today. And Lulu has expertise in experience design and user experience. She's worked with major companies like Bloomberg and MasterCard and Johns Hopkins, building software platforms and tools. But she's also done that for cannabis and psychedelics. And through her work on the Revel and beyond, she's been a champion for community and normalization and innovation in the space. I think of Lulu as the queen of New York, someone who knows everyone and who everyone knows or thinks they do. But today we're hoping to get the real with Lulu. So welcome.
What's up, guys? And I'm making me blush. Thank you.
Yeah,
Lulu. I mean, it's all true. And hearing that intro, it feels like you've lived multiple lives, and I'm excited to dig into that because anytime I go to New York or hear about it, it's like, oh, you got to check with Lulu. But funny story before we get started, you also have a presence in Miami. The last time we hung out was at the Cannabis, I believe. We were down there on the beach. I remember we were having a happy hour, drinking some cannabis beverages on the beach. It was beautiful. And this plane flies by with this banner, and it says, Nelly and Ashanti at 11. And I was like, Nelly and Ashanti? I'm like, my 20-year-old self was like just so excited, but I'm like, well, whatever. And we were sitting at dinner that night, and all of a sudden I get a text that says, Lulu has a table at 11. I'm like, no way. And so fast forward, we were like bird's eye view of Nelly, Ashanti, and Fat Joe came on the stage, and I was just, my 20-year-old self was just having a heyday. But you got this big welcome banner on a digital billboard that said, welcome back, Lulu. And I'm like, wait, Lulu owns Miami too?
No. That was an epic night, to be sure. It was 11th 10-year anniversary. And the leadership at 11 has been really, really kind to me. So they're like really amazing people. And you could tell, right? The whole staff was super sweet and super nice and was very genuine. But when you have leadership at the top, like exhibiting really like approachable and positive energy, I think it trickles down to the rest of the staff and the team. So like that was, they're very, very nice to me. So shout out to 11.
Amazing. Amazing. Well, that's all I hear about you. You've built this huge community in New York. I presume that you mirror that in kind of how you build your ecosystem. But yeah, like tell us how it all started. How did you go from Bloomberg and all this like software work to being the quote unquote queen of New York cannabis?
Um, Gosh, that keep making me blush, you guys. So I mean, I started with all cannabis related things when my parents moved with me from China to Eugene, Oregon in 1979. I think we were one of the first families they let out, quote unquote, officially from mainland China. And then, so being from the North, there's no exposure to Western culture at all. It was like, communist countries were very isolating at that time. So when we got to Eugene, Oregon, the people that, helped acclimate my family to American culture, babysat me, took me to the dead shows, exposed me to crystal energy healing, that went to do Tai Chi with my family on the weekends and were really interested in herbal medicine. They were all American, Eugene, Oregon cannabis growers and kind of distributors. And at that time, there was just all the things that are quote unquote popular now. I was raised by those aunties and uncles. So when I was curious about, cannabis, I was 13. My aunt went and procured and sat with me when she gave me 8 bong hits. I think she was actually trying to deter me from consuming more. But, I fell in love with it. And then when I was curious about psychedelics, my uncle went and got mushrooms for me and sat with me. So I've just had a very different experience. I think, Ben, you can appreciate this as an Asian family being open to plant medicine. Kind of set the standard for really understanding that if you have community that talks about it in a different way, that treats it in a different way, even the most hardcore, I call them my Chinese communist dragon parents, they're open to it. They're like extremely conservative, but they're open to anything plant medicine. And then, of course, when I turned 18, I was like, get me the fuck away from these Birkenstocks and hemp bracelets. So I, went to school in Washington where I fell into tech. It's just like, I'm going to date myself, but I started doing tech in 1994, designing websites, and then kind of grew along with that industry. And then, moved to New York for the first time in 1999. The winter freaked me out. I went to San Francisco, spent 10 years in San Francisco, but been back and forth with New York, and then moved to LA, lived there for 6 years, back and forth New York, and now full time here since, so I've been in New York since 2006. And then 2015, Washington market opened up, and my friends were like, can you come out here and maybe like look at the software, because the track and trace system just does not map to anything that we're doing. So I flew to Washington State, and at that moment, the track and trace program shut off their APIs. So I was like, I really can't do much. But and my friends from Root Sciences and Suspended Brands, they're a tier 3 producer processor, said, why don't you just stay and figure out if there's something you want to do? So I literally shadowed them and did all of their like design and things like that. Shadowed them for about 2.5 years, stayed at the farm. And then went along with them as they were building out facilities for the manufacturing processing side of the house. And with my background user experience, just kept on asking questions and learning from that way, just by observing and asking questions. And here we are in New York with our market opened. Jacoby Holland, my co-founder, and I met in 2016 in New York, and we were both trying to launch a tech platform. And then we basically came together, and anytime we went to conferences, we were just like, oh, some of these conferences just don't represent us. It's not kind of like the vibe that we like. It's, there's a lot of information that was only available and access to people that either had a lot of money or resources. And then we love New York. There's a big passion we have for the New York vibe and the New York energy and people of New York and how they do business. So we said, why don't we just start bringing friends that we met along the way in the cannabis industry and start bringing them to New York? Because New York is a very different way of doing business than anywhere else. So we just started seeding friends. And now some of our friends are a part of, the regulators in New York. Some have started, really expanding and doing a really a lot of beautiful business. So yeah, homegrown. That's how we started 9 years ago.
Amazing.
So cool. So you're talking about kind of how you grew on the Revel, which is the organization behind Revelry. And Ben and I talk a lot about building community and finding like-minded leaders and colleagues and friends to kind of help all of us individually up level. And it really occurs to me that that's what you were doing with On the Revel and still are. And I wonder how you went from small community grassroots effort into putting on this massive event that you're about to put on in a couple weeks.
I
How
mean,
that,
it's all about my team. I think it's pretty amazing that, small number of us, I think there's like 7 of us now, a bunch of knuckleheads. We're like, we believe that everybody should have access and opportunity to cannabis, and all the diversity that other states are talking about, like it's in our backyard. We have so many different types of people from different backgrounds, not just what somebody looks like, right? But their education, their professional history, their religion, like all of the things that create diversity, like we have that here. So we started, I mean, we just grew, it's been 9 years now. So we started as a meetup and then went to like a conference, kind of TED Talk style. We call them our signature talks. And then as soon as the market opened at the end of 2022, we held our first buyers club, February of 2023. And that was 65 exhibitors, small tables in a gymnasium. And we brought in 44 of the 65 or something like that, card licensees. And I just got to say, like, without my team, the fact that we've been able to scale so fast in 2 years, without celebrity endorsement, without capital investment, without any experience in trade shows, like I think that speaks volumes to the excellence and the might of our small team to be able to do that. I also want to say that this could not happen without the community that we've spent 9 years building with and making sure that people have information and access. So this could only happen because how New Yorkers can come together and that my team and I share the same ethos alongside with our community. So that's summing up how it all happened.
As someone that's constantly trying to cull or like focus, prioritize their event calendar, I'm really intrigued by this show. Are people from around the country coming out to this, or is it purely focused on the New York ecosystem? Like, how are you positioning this? Who are you going after? Who do you want like to be attending? And
I
how
mean,
does it kind of fit amongst the ecosystem of conferences that have proliferated over the years?
so I think what sets us apart is we are very much aligned with what's happening with our market, right? So, I mean, as let's say I'm not a marketer, but learning more about marketing, it's like you always want eyes and you always want people to come. But as a user experience designer, Jacoby is also coming from design thinking. We really try to create programming and activities and events around what the market needs. So currently what the market needs, how we started this was, hey, all the stores didn't know how to get in touch with the suppliers, and all the suppliers didn't know how to get in touch with the stores. So our primary focus for our buyers club, we do proper vetting. We want to make sure that everyone that's coming is an operator. So I'd say 90% of all of our attendees are retail buyers and micro business buyers. And our brands, I'd say like probably 85% of all of our exhibitors are brands, not ancillary. So at this moment in time, our entire focus is make sure that we are creating a space to support the growth of our market through connecting brands with retailers. It might change in the future, but that's what's amazing about our team. Like we're very nimble and agile, so we're very much responding to the market and listening to the market versus thinking what we designing things that we think the market needs. And I think that's just a big differentiator. So of course everybody's welcome to come, but we're very we try to do the messaging for our attendees like exhibitors not going to want to talk to your wife or your friend that's interested in cannabis, like bring them on day 2. That's why we have a day 2. Day 1 is concentrated POs, leads all day. And that's what we try to encourage people to do. And I mean, we don't have to encourage much. It's like, if you've been to one of our events, if you've asked people, like the buzz is real. Like people are just in there doing business, and that's all they want to do. If you've never done business with New Yorkers, it's extra, extra. You can cut to the chase. You don't have to do these long sales cycles. It's not like the West Coast where you and I can have a Zoom relationship for 10 years. New Yorkers want to shake your hand, look you in the eye, smoke a joint, have dinner, have a drink. It's like old world way of doing business. And I very much appreciate that.
I love that.
I love that you just broke open about New York, because you and I talked last week and you reminded me that there's actually a lot of really good news coming out of New York, and the headlines don't always sound like such good news. But I think we should talk about some of the good stuff that you're witnessing and the energy that is flowing through New York that makes it really unique and special. So tell us a little bit about who the operators are and what you're seeing in the market.
I mean, it's been really beautiful because like we wouldn't be able to scale if our brands and our market wasn't scaling. So like, we've had some folks that are like, remember the first one we did? We were like tiny, and now they're our sponsors. So it's just been really beautiful to see like of course it's a shit show. I'm not gonna like, candy coat anything. But the ones we want to always highlight the folks that are actually also putting their blood, sweat, and tears, because all the new stuff, a lot of the new stuff are just there's stuff that we can't control. There's also a lot of the new stuff is caused by a couple of people that are usually like throwing a temper tantrum. I'm just going to call it as it is because they didn't get their way. But the majority of our market are operators that are really trying to make this work. So I really want to like make sure that when people see these news headlines, to just try to cut out that noise and see that our numbers are doing well. I think the last statistic I read, I think it was like almost 80% of our operators are social equity. So that has never been done anywhere else in any other market. So I'm just really proud of that. It's never, and market opens, it's never easy. My user experience side of my brain is like, can't we just learn from all the other ones and do it different? But I have no influence in legislation and regulation. But I just think that like New Yorkers get a really bad rep, right? Like New Yorkers are not nice. But they're very kind. They will just not deal with any of the fluff that doesn't need to be there because there's like so many things to do. Like I just realized if I didn't have ADHD beforehand, I certainly do now. So it's just getting things done. I think if you're a brand or if you're, trying to do business, I think it's just really refreshing to be able to actually do business quickly. And I think that's part of the New York hustle that as an immigrant, I very much appreciate.
Could we double click real quick on the equity operators, because I have this image plays in the back of my head from some of the OCM hearings when the rollout was going really rough and people were holding on to real estate and just running out of money. It's great to hear that things are thriving and that there's so many equity operators. Are they actually thriving in the market? Because that would be a very unique use case or case study compared to a lot of the equity programs across the country, including here in California. And so it's great to hear. Are they enjoying the kind of dynamic right now?
I think the operators that are not in the city are probably having a lot more success. New York City, it's very dense. There's just so much more competition, like with any like local area. If you put too many operators there, retail stores, you're just doing a lot of competition. So, and I think the success of an operator has to do with, a couple other things like, how strong is your team? How big is your ego? Like, how are you able to ask for help? So I can't speak on all the operators. I think we have like 450 retail stores open right now. But, I think the proximity thing is crazy because, I hear West Coast people talk about like proximity protection. It's important to us because on the West Coast, you might have a school or a church every couple of miles. In New
Yeah.
York, you can have a school or a church every couple of blocks. So I think before people have all these opinions on the West Coast about things, you also have to look at it from a native or a regional, you know, point of view, because the same thing that you're forming a judgment on the West Coast is just different in New York.
Yeah, absolutely. NRA, the last show I was just talking about rules with alcohol and cannabis, and this one applies. We were talking about labels last week. Proximity is another one. It's like how many apartment buildings in New York have a liquor store at the bottom, and how close are the schools and churches to those? Like why is this any different?
And I think it's also different the way they calculate proximity, because I think a lot of people do the bird's eye or the crow's nest view, or where they just go from point to point. But you got to take into account the buildings, right? Like something that might just be across the way of like, maybe like 50 feet. To get access to it, you have to like walk around. Like if you're walking avenues, that's like almost a mile. So it just, sometimes things are just not sensible in the way they calculate things. I cannot wait when sensibility comes back, if it ever does.
I mean, I also just don't get it. Like, it's like, what's proximity do? like, I mean, especially New York kids, they probably walk miles a day. Like, what? I just don't know what it's defending against. Like,
I don't have
seeing
kids.
it from the church, seeing it from the school.
Yeah, I think it's just religious organizations and children not being in their purview. As I don't know, I just feel like the government just never trusts its citizens, and it's always creating things to control factor or whatever reason. I have my own personal opinions. I just turned 50 and I'm like, I've stepped out of the matrix, and I think things, see things very clearly now. It's just not sensible. And, I think we all come from a place of, in the cannabis space, of at least trusting the consumers, and trusting that they can make decisions. Like the fact that we can't have two vices together at once, even though we grew up probably drinking and smoking weed together at a party and we're all alive. Like, forget that. But um, so I digress.
Well, yeah, I think that's interesting, and I think consumer habits and products are also showing themselves to be a little unique in New York as well. When you look at the form factors that are moving with the most momentum in the market, it's not quite the same as some of the other early markets, and it seems like New York's are really leaning into discrete consumption and manufactured products more than in other markets at the beginning. Specifically, just that straight up flower doesn't have as large of a share as it has in other markets when they've launched. And I've thought that that's been really interesting and says a lot about the New York consumer. What do you think about the way that New York consumption patterns are unfolding? And does it have to do with the product quality? Does it have to do with the people in the market? Why are we seeing different consumption habits in New York than in other markets?
I think there's a couple variables. So I think with New York, we started growing a flower first before the stores were open, as a way to kind of combat a lot of the patterns from other states where you kind of open at the same time and the stores are like have no product, and then you have to wait for the flower to come in. So New York started growing flower first, and I think we had a year ahead to be able to do that. But then none of the stores opened, so we kind of had the inverse problem of that. So a lot of folks, just processed their flower. So we had a lot of vapes and flower come in first. And less flower, but more vapes. It's like it was just an easier way to handle the supply that was happening in New York. And of course, with the extracted forms, we could do the edibles as well, the other manufactured goods. So that was just like a brief, maybe my opinion of why that happened. But I think also, New York is, they say, one of the largest consumer markets in the world. And even my friends who are not heads, right? They're in finance, they're in art, they're, do design, fashion, all of the other cultural things. Everybody smokes weed or consumes weed. And I think also you have a large population that needs to be discreet, right? So like it's a very different mindset. New Yorkers can be very progressive about culture, but it's a very conservative state with institutions, right? Finance and real estate. So I think there's a larger consumption for the discrete products that you were mentioning, like having an edible. Like you can still like be a coder and go into like Bloomberg and not smell like weed because you don't want to draw that attention to you, right? Versus you go to California. I started my tech experience in 2000, and everyone, like, you'd see the developers go outside for lunch break and they'd come back in a puff of smoke. So it's just a very different perception of what a cannabis user is still, and that's what we're trying to normalize and destigmatize, is having no shame. You're still getting your things done, and you're advertising it by yourself as, I'm not ashamed of this. And that's kind of what I did at Bloomberg, was I spoke openly about it. I'm like, hey, I'm going to the cannabis space, and having that energy that you're speaking to others without like hiding, I think does portray it in just a different way. And that's what we've always tried to do with our Revelry events, is creating a space where there's an amplification of people who are interested, who feel good about it, and who want to share. And when you come to Revelry, the vibe is unmatched. So I hope you guys can make it this year, but if not, we'll see you next year.
Absolutely. Speaking about institutions and just kind of the influence and everything, one of the things that I've heard about are the community boards. And I'm wondering if you could kind of let us in a little bit on how New York's community boards are kind of shaping, the licensing or the culture, and just the interplay of policy, activism, and just kind of like the local decision making.
So I learned a lot about community boards via Mar Fitzgerald, who's a really amazing human. So imagine you have a city council. New York does have a city council, but now imagine every neighborhood has kind of like a city council. So these are the community boards. If you're trying to open up a liquor store, a restaurant, a bar, a cannabis dispensary, you have to go and present in front of the community board. And I don't know the exact, don't quote me on this, but I do know that the community board can either recommend or not recommend a dispensary or a liquor store from opening or not. So again,
and who usually sits on these boards? Are elected citizens or
elected citizens, I believe. Don't get me. Yeah. So if you want to learn more about it, Mar Fitzgerald, she's an amazing human. She's also been, working with the community boards to set some standards and SOPs around like how to review and what does this mean. So she's been very instrumental in just getting the community boards educated. And of course, every community board is a reflection of their neighborhood. Some folks are for it, some folks are against it. A lot of times the people that run might not be the voice of the people, just like sometimes we're seeing, on brand with the United States right now. But their community boards are very important. I think they can be very active. And that's one of the biggest differences I was talking to Anna Ray about, East Coast, West Coast. It's like sometimes, with West Coast friends in the industry, like they'll be like, oh, this person didn't pay me, or this person was such a dick. But they don't go up to the person like, you're a fucking dick, why don't you pay me? New Yorkers will do that. New Yorkers will be in your face about it, and then they'll they'll hold a protest in front of your store if you're a bad actor. And I think that's very refreshing for me, growing up with the West Coast. Those moments where like you see a friend or something and then it's great, and the next moment something your energy's off, but you don't know, but they're telling everybody else except for you. Like that kind of passive aggressiveness, which is just part of culture on the West Coast, versus the directness on the East Coast. And I find that I thrive very much in this world of like, why are you being a bitch? Like, and you can be like, well, you're being a bitch, and then you like hug it out afterwards, So like, I really, uncomfortable. You can sit in uncomfortable things because living in New York is very uncomfortable. Period. The end.
Right. Yeah, I love it.
Well, so talk about how that translates into business approach and the way that you curate kind of the relationships at Revelry, who gets to be in the room, who doesn't. You talked about making sure it's operators, but I've heard you say that you've got kind of a fuck yes or a fuck no mindset. So
Yes.
talk more about that.
Yeah, I mean, fuck no, fuck yes mindset is essentially like just be cool, don't be abusive. Don't, treat my team like shit. We have a handful of people on the fuck no list, and it's because you came at us really aggressive in a way that didn't have to be aggressive. Like, I love my team. My team is the most kind-hearted, excellent, like, doers, and all we ask is for people to like come through and just be cool. Like, you're coming, like, if you're going to a friend's house, you're gonna be cool with them. You're not gonna be like, give me this, give me that, I want this, and go fuck yourself. Like, that's not the way to start with us. And normally we have a protocol. We'll do 2 rounds of trying to resolve something. Like, hey, that's part of cannabis that people don't understand. It's like bad things, stupid things, things that are our control happen all the time. That's just normal. It's about how you can solution together. It's about how you can come and like put your egos aside and be like, okay, we fucked up. We fucked up. Okay, now how are we going to solution that together? And I think that's the biggest strength of my team is we can solution together pretty quickly in a respectable way. But if we go 2 rounds and we're like, hey, these are some of the options, like we just want you to be nice to our team, and you come back saying go fuck yourself, it's going to be an automatic fuck no, dude. Like, we're very nice until you insult someone on my team. Like, that's just how it is. Like, and again, I respect however you want to run your house, your company, and if you treat your people like shit, good luck to you. But do not bring that into our pool. Like, our pool is kind of clean right now. Don't come piss in it. Please don't do that. And it's not like we have a whole fuck no list. The opportunity is here. Everybody should come to Revelry. We're not trying to gatekeep or trying to exclude anyone at all. All we're asking is just kind of like, hey, we're throwing a cool party that everyone seems to be vibing with. Come through for sure, but don't be weird and don't be rude and don't treat my team like shit. That's where it comes from.
I love that. One of the books that I've recommended the most over the years is a book called Essentialism, and one of the main tenets of that book is that if it's not a hell yes, it's a hell no, and it's just a way for us to focus our time and energy on the positive things that drive our business forward.
Yeah, I mean, like, if you're being rude, we have a fuck no because this woman came in yelling at our exhibitors, yelling at the retailers, yelling at me. And I'm like, bro, like, what the fuck, dude? Like, clearly you're yelling at all of these exhibitors that you could be working with. You're yelling at all the stores that you could actually sell product to. Now you're throwing a fit in front of your consumers. Like, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing? Like, and I was just like, it was the first time I had to call security to have someone escorted. Like, in the 7 years at that time, we'd never had any issues with, like, except for this one situation.
Yeah. Let's dive into the team a little bit, just because I know that diversity, which, buzzword, whatever, is not just race, right? Like,
Yes.
obviously, East Coast, West Coast, Asian descent, like, we love diversity, but how do you think of diversity, especially as it pertains to building your team?
I think it's just really important to have different points of view. Again, solutioning, right? Like, coming together to find a solution together. So Jacoby Holland is my co-founder. He's actually a mathematician. And he started at one of the first vertical grows in Colorado. And he and I met. We're both in tech. And he's half black and he's half white. If we want to talk about race, he's probably like 20 years younger than me. Very different perspective. Then we have Peter Mercado. He is a neuroscientist, and he's Dominican and Puerto Rican. Also just turned 30, I believe. And then Jason Starr, he is a human rights lawyer by trade. He co-wrote Cuomo's CRTA, but then also helped with authoring parts of the MRTA, which is our legislation for cannabis. Then we have Saki Fenderson, who is just longtime advocate, community builder, instructor, teacher, production, all the things. And then Geraldine May Cueva comes from marketing and trade shows in terms of like attending as well as exhibiting. And then we just brought on Delilah Ware, who is our LIM graduate. So our school, a college, LIM College, actually has a business and cannabis program. So she just graduated, so she's the kind of baby of the group. So I'm talking about building out a really well-balanced team that can answer questions. Like, I don't know everything. If someone asked me about cannabinoids, I'd be like, I don't know everything, but Peter can answer that, right? If I had something around legislation or regulatory framework, Jason would be the person to answer. So it's like, it's building, like I always say, like, imagine if we're the little lions and we come together as Voltron. Like, everyone is an expertise, a subject matter expert. And together we can come together and just build something greater, or answer things quickly, or solutions together in a way that makes most sense. So that's what I mean by diversity.
I just appreciate you using the Voltron reference when you could have
I'm old.
thrown something else in there. Yeah, I'm the Voltron crew too. Like, Power Rangers got nothing on them.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, Lulu, we're getting close to the end of the hour, and I guess I want to hear what you're most excited about for Revelry that's coming up.
I mean, I just think it's been, at this moment in time, it is a really beautiful moment in New York cannabis history, right? Like, market is coming along. Now, I don't know how things are going to go in the future, but I'm just really grateful that we're part of this moment, and that, we're seeing the operators grow. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that's still happening with the lawsuits and all of that, but I don't really want to focus on that too much. It's the fact that we have New Yorkers who are usually pretty judgmental about things, actually enjoying things and smiling and excited and coming together and celebrating in the way that only New Yorkers do. We're going to have our Buyers Club on Friday, September 12th. So we have probably over 200 brands right now. We'll probably bring in just over 400 retail buyers and micro business buyers to come through. Day 2 is our consumer day. Like I mentioned before, at that moment we started consumer day, there really wasn't vendor days available. So our solution to that was, well, the brands are already set up. Let's bring in the consumers in. And then we'll also have music and stage programming. And I'm excited to announce that we're doing a partnership with Smorgasbord. If you don't know them, they're one of the largest food festival groups. So they're coming in to help with the vendors. So it's exciting to see some of like the crossover that's starting to happen amongst the different industries in New York that are larger players. So I'm excited about that. And then we're going to be launching Psychedelics, our psychedelic conference next year as well.
That seems like a big one. Yeah, let's talk about that.
It's kind of the same reason why we started Revelry. It's because the two important groups that make an industry happen at the beginning are the advocates and activists, and then also the scientists, the lab coats, and the business guys, right? The suits and the lab coats. I think all of us probably fall somewhere in between. So we always wanted to make sure that everyone in between felt comfortable and approachable. Because I remember going to some of my first events, I just felt extremely like intimidated and extremely like an outsider. So what we're trying to do is create environments where different types of people can come together and feel confident that they're going to be coming and learning. And psychedelics is kind of the next phase. I've been working with Reggie from Oakland Hi-Fi probably since 2019 in terms of that space. And I think it's time to create a space for those that are interested to really come together and get different opinions. Like, there's so many different types of opinions out there. I'm really starting to see that there's folks that are saying, these are the rules for this, and this is how it needs to be, and you're with our team or you're not. And I'm like, dude, you totally missed the whole point of psychedelics, right? It's like So excited to be, curating some programming about the things we're doing discovery right now. So really learning about all the things that, newbies or, curious people or even, folks that are in the industry in different ways are wanting to learn. So we'll do our programming, and that's something you'll always have with on the Revel events, is that we will have such diverse backgrounds and opinions, and everyone on stage and everyone in the room are going to be open-minded to all the different opinions, and hopefully people will learn some things, get inspired by some things, and just continuing to help normalize and destigmatize by the way they're projecting their energy around these topics.
I love that. I'm here for that. I'll be there. Well, okay, Lulu, really appreciate you spending time with us. I have one more question for you. Over the years, especially being here on the West Coast, a lot of us were looking to New York, being the tastemaker that it is, the opportunity with nightlife, just the big cultural difference. And then we went through the roller coaster of the rough rollout. But now you're saying that things are good and heading in the right way, and it's starting to sound like that. There's a lot more licensed operators. What's on the horizon for New York? Like, does it really have the opportunity to kind of fulfill that vision that we all had for it back in the day, or is the conservatism going to continue to push back for it? And then is that going to continue into this psychedelics conversation that Revelry is now entering?
That is such a good question, because I think there's a lot of external forces that contribute to a lot of the decision making, right? It's like all of a sudden we have Mamdani, who is, really popular with the people. He's a little bit, they're calling him socialist, communist, all these things. And I think it's making the more conservative folks really nervous. So they're going to flex a certain way, right? So I don't know how to answer that. In my perfect world, yes, they're going to give us, as the citizens and operators, the benefit of the doubt that we can actually try new things. Like all of our industries, like you talked about, the nightlife, hospitality. Like, wouldn't it be great if we could, work with the, health department and be like, hey, let's start, adding some beverages as a test. It'd be great if we could have that for folks that don't want to drink, alternatives at all of the restaurants and bars and clubs. Like, that would be fantastic. It'd be great for our schools to start working with, like, one of my dreams is, when the OCM or anybody else wants to do like an initiative for, a campaign, whether it's harm reduction or anything, wouldn't it be great if we worked with the colleges that we have here, right? Like, why do we want to spend $2 million with a government PR group that creates messaging that doesn't resonate with anyone, when we have some of the brightest brains and, doing their master's program for advertising, design, marketing? Like, why don't we give those kids the opportunity to make that their senior thesis, right? And then you have messaging that hits with the people. You have kids that actually have something on their portfolio that makes them stand out. Like, can we start cross-pollinating with all the things that are here and like save money and just, I don't know. That's how my brain works.
Preach. I love it.
Totally. Well, Lulu, it is time for our last call, which is your last opportunity on the mic to leave our listeners with some advice, a call to action, or a closing thought. So we turn it over to you. What's your last call?
I hope everyone comes out and checks out New York. I think it can be a little bit intimidating, but we'd love to welcome folks just to kind of check out what's going on in New York, and meet the New Yorkers that are here. Yeah, I'm just kind of sorry. I'm 2.5 weeks out from our event, so in my head I'm processing all of the things. But I just am very proud to be part of the New York market right now, and I think people will be very surprised when they come through and just really see what all of the misconceptions about how New Yorkers are. I'm excited for folks to be like, oh my God, like, that was cool. These people are actually pretty cool and very, very kind.
Well, we're proud to have you on the show and grateful that you're spending this time. I know what it's like 2.5 weeks out from an event. Your hair is on fire. You're running around, but you seem very calm, and that is amazing.
It's all the psychedelics, Ben. It's all the psychedelics.
Amazing. Lulu Tsui from On the Revel. Thank you so much for spending the last hour with us.
Thank you so much.
We'll be checking in soon.
I appreciate you guys.
Yeah, we'll see you in New York.
All right, folks. What'd you think? Thank you for engaging, liking, subscribing, doing all the things. Huge thank you to our teams at Vertosa and Wolf Meyer, and of course, our producer, Eric Rossetti. If you've enjoyed this episode, please stop and leave a review. Let us be seen. We need the help. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you watch us or listen to us. As always, folks, stay curious, stay informed, and most importantly, keep your spirits high. Until next time, that's the show.